Alright, so we got some frozen strawberries that we bagged up this spring. We had about, out of the backyard, we probably got about 100 pounds of strawberries or so. I made wine with some, and now we're going to make some strawberry jam. So the first thing we're doing, we got all of our jars over here, is we're going to get them all washed up and cleaned. And scrub them with soap and water. And then we're going to move them over here. We'll fill the side of the sink up with some hot water and just let them soak while we are preparing our jam. So get them cleaned up and we'll come over here and start on that. Now I use the Sure-Jell fruit pectin. Like I said, I had frozen strawberries. After they're frozen, they kind of break down a little bit, so I don't worry about chopping them up or anything. It always seems to make pretty good jam that way. The important thing, I'll show you here on the instruction sheet, is we're going to be doing strawberry jelly. Alright, let's focus, sir. Focus, focus. Strawberry jelly. We're going to use 6 cups crushed strawberries, 4 cups sugar, which should make about 8 cups of jam. The important thing is to make sure that you follow the directions precisely on this. I'm coming from a family where the cooks never want to measure anything, and I've kind of fallen into that habit. But I found with making jelly and jam that you have to do exactly what the directions say or it's not going to turn out. I've had it turn out to where it's been way too syrupy, and I've had it turn out to be way too thick. I do with my strawberry jam, this recipe calls for 1 box of the Sure-Jell. I use 1.5 boxes. I'm going to make 2 batches. The other important thing is don't combine your batches when you're making them. Make them in single batches. I don't know why it makes a difference, but it does. Every time I try to double my batches, it never turns out. So I just do a couple of single batches, and that gives me about 16 of the little half pints or pints of strawberry jam. Alright, so in my pot I got 6 cups of strawberries, and then I got 4 cups of sugar. That's some strawberries for my next batch. I got 4 cups of sugar over there that's going to go into it. Here I got my lids. I put them in a little saucepan with some water, and then as soon as I get to where I'm close to canning, I'll turn that on so that gets hot. Back here I got my pot going with the hot water bath. So once I put the jam in the jars, it'll go into the pot for 10 minutes. Make sure that the water's over the top of the jars when you do that. The extra tools I got over here is I just use a little pair of, I don't have any of the fancy canning tools because I don't can a whole lot, so I just use these for pulling the lids out of that pot. I got a soup ladle that I use for spooning my mixture from the pot into the jars. And I also got myself a homemade jar funnel that I made out of a gas station cup. Again, I don't have any of the fancy canning stuff because I only do this like once a year or so, and just with the jelly, so I ain't going to invest in that stuff. I got my potato masher that I'll use once I start cooking these to kind of mash them down just a little bit more. And this is the only actual canning gadget I got is the jar lifter, because their jars will be hot. Lift them out of there. I always put a towel down when I take the jars out of my pot here. I'll put them on the towel to let them cool. It's real important to take them straight out, set them down, and just leave them alone. Let them cool. If you get anything cold next to them, it can crack the jars. So I always just set them right next to my pot and let them sit for a few hours before I do anything with them. Then you'll start to hear them pop, and hopefully we'll get some of that on video. I got my pectin mixed up over here, so we're going to go ahead and we'll get our stove turned on and start bringing this up to temperature. I'm going to get my little metal stirrer stick out of there, and the first thing we're going to do is mix our fruit pectin into the strawberries. We're going to get that mixed in and bring that to a boil. And while I'm waiting for that to heat up, I'm going to grab my masher here and just start kind of giving these guys a mash. Alright, so as you can see, we got them kind of smushed up a little bit. Now we're going to leave this on high heat until it comes to a full boil. Meaning that as we stir it, the boil doesn't go away. And then when we get to that point, we're going to add our 4 cups of sugar. And then after we add that, we're going to bring it to a boil and boil it for exactly 1 minute and then pull it off the heat. And this is a very important step too, that you only boil it for that you do it exactly for 1 minute or it doesn't turn out. I don't know the exact science behind it, but I just know that if you don't follow the directions, it doesn't work. Okay, so now we're at that full rolling boil. As you can see, as I stir it, the boil doesn't go away. So we're going to dump our 4 cups of sugar in there. And we're going to stir this up real quick like. And it's also, you don't want to turn your head at all because this stuff can boil over real quick. Okay, so now we're going to set our timer for 1 minute. And we're going to keep stirring this for that 1 minute. And our 1 minute's almost over. There it is. I'm going to turn the burner off and pull it off the heat. Now, I know some people like to let their stuff sit for a little bit, and they'll either skim the foam off, or if you let it sit for a few minutes, you can kind of stir it back in there. I think it's just more of an appearance thing. I don't worry about it. I go ahead and go straight to canning. Another thing I'll do to check to make sure my jelly is going to set right is I'll stick a spoon in the freezer to get it good and cold, and then just do a quick dip in the jelly. And as you can see on the spoon there, let me see if I can do this with 2 hands without dropping my camera into our jam there. Is it thick and dried up? It's just like jelly should be. And then this gets to be my first taste test. That's good. So I got my jars over here. I'm going to get them ready. These were soaking in the hot water bath. I just put them over here upside down just for a minute to make sure there's no extra liquid inside. And then the way I do this is I take my little homemade funnel here and I just kind of stick it in the jar, and then I use my ladle to start ladling it in there. So we got them all canned up. After you get them canned up, you want to make sure that the rims are completely clean, because that's where you're going to get your seal. So then what we're going to do is we're going to come over where we got our lids that are nice and hot, and I'm going to start setting them on top. And we got our rings soaking over here in the hot water as well. So we'll get them, and then you just put them on hand tight. Okay, we got them on hand tight. We got out of top our boiling water bath ready to go. So now we're going to use this guy and start set them down in there. Notice that the water is over the tops of the jars. That's important, because what this is going to do is push out any remaining oxygen that's in there. So we got them guys in there. Ow! Grab that hot lid again. Set our timer for 10 minutes. Go. Now while that's going, I'll start on my second batch. So I got batch 2 done just in time to pull these guys out of here. So they've been in there for just a little longer than 10 minutes. And we're going to pull them out. And set them on a towel. Because I don't want to put nothing that hot straight on my counter. Now you can see how it's kind of separated in there. All the chunks have floated to the top, and the juice has stayed on the bottom. What I will do is, after they've sat for a little bit, I will start rotating them to kind of help mix that up. About every 5 minutes I'll just turn the jar over, and that kind of helps mix that back in. So now we'll sit and wait, and you should start hearing the lids pop. We should get 6 distinct pops. So let's wait, and oh, there goes 1, there's 2. Sometimes it doesn't take too long, sometimes it might take 3-4 minutes for one to pop. Alright, so I started flipping the ones. Then you see I just, about every 5 minutes I'll flip them. That'll help that stuff get mixed back in. And then something else you can do, if you don't get quite a full jar, like you can see this one's not all the way full, is just fill it up and just stick it straight in the fridge. You don't have to process it. That one you can go ahead and just start eating out of. These, from what I've read, they're shelf stable for around a year. I just used my last jar that's in the fridge now, and it was, we're right at 18 months with it, and it's still good. So I think as long as you get them sealed up real good, store them in a cool, dark place, they're probably good up to a couple years. I don't know that I would go much past that, though. It's always important, too, to check your lid on them before you eat them. If you push on the lid and it pops like that one just did, that means it's not sealed. So if you get one of your fresh jars that you haven't opened yet, and you can make that lid pop, that means it's not sealed and you shouldn't eat it. Alright, so our jelly's cooled, or our jam, I'm sorry. And as you can see, I kind of, like I said, I just kind of turn them every once in a while and everything gets mixed back up in there like it's supposed to be. Starting to set up. And I showed you how, you can push on the lids to make sure they're sealed. Another way to kind of test is if you tap on them, they should all sound the same. Now here's one I got open. See how that sounds a little different? And you can also hit them like with a spoon. Hear how those sound? You come to that one, it sounds got the ring to it. That's because that one's not sealed. So if you have any of them that didn't seal, like this one, then you just throw it in the fridge and use it up. Or you can try reprocessing it too. Maybe try putting a new lid on it. You might add some gunk on the lip or something, and that's another way you can seal them back up too. But I usually I don't get too many that don't seal up, so we just use them up. So I hope this helps you make some jam. If you have any comments about maybe something you didn't like the way I did, or maybe a better way of doing it, or a different way of doing it that you want to add, just throw some comments down there. I always enjoy reading those, and maybe somebody can teach me something. Thanks for watching.